In the heart of the untamed frontier, where the sun rose and set on endless plains, life was both a blessing and a curse. Dust hung in the air, clinging to every surface like a reminder of hardship. Settlers carved out their homes with grit and determination, relying on one another as they faced nature's fierce challenges. However, in this rugged land, not everyone was welcomed with open arms. Orphaned children like Willa often found themselves at the mercy of those who had lost their way. Willa had learned to survive in a world that seemed indifferent to her plight. With tangled hair and dirt-streaked skin, she moved swiftly across the rough landscape, always alert. The people around her tended to view orphans with suspicion. They whispered about bad omens and misfortune. As a result, Willa kept her head down and avoided drawing attention to herself. She scavenged for food and did whatever it took to stay hidden from prying eyes. But even in such darkness, there were moments of light. Willa would sometimes catch glimpses of beauty, the golden glow of sunrise breaking over distant hills or the sound of laughter from children playing nearby. Those fleeting joys reminded her that life still held promise, despite its cruelty. On this fateful night, however, the air was thick with tension. A mob gathered under the cover of twilight, their faces illuminated by flickering torches as they prepared to deliver what they believed was justice. Willa was bound at the center of their wrath. Fear gripped her heart as she wondered how things had come to this. The flames crackled ominously in anticipation of her fate. Yet hope remained flickering inside her, like kindling waiting for a spark. It was then that Dirk Calder entered the scene. A cowboy by nature and a protector at heart, he sensed something was terribly amiss as he rode through the night on his sturdy steed. He had seen too much injustice in his travels and vowed never again to turn away from those who needed help. As Gunsmoke filled the air with an acrid scent, Dirk felt his blood rush with determination. This moment would be different. He wouldn't let fear dictate his course any longer. Willa had grown up without the warmth of a family, an orphan navigating a world that often felt cold and unwelcoming. The frontier was a wild place, filled with both breathtaking beauty and brutal realities. With no parents to care for her, Willa had learned to fend for herself, developing resourcefulness far beyond her years. She scavenged along the edges of the settlements, hoping to find scraps of food or useful items left behind by the settlers. Despite her grit, Willa's life was marked by loneliness. She would watch from the shadows as families gathered around campfires, their laughter ringing through the air like music she longed to join. Her heart ached at the sight of children playing with their siblings while she remained an outsider, too afraid to approach for fear of rejection or disdain. Whispers about orphans like her filled the air. Bad luck, misfortune, and curses were often associated with children who had no roots. Yet, despite these challenges, Willa possessed a fierce spirit. On days when hope seemed distant, she would sit quietly under the vast sky and dream of a better life. She imagined a place where kindness prevailed over cruelty, where people judged each other by their hearts instead of their pasts. It was these dreams that ignited her will to survive. Her resilience was tested daily as she navigated dangers not only from nature but also from those who saw her as a target for their anger and fears. She often found herself hiding in the underbrush whenever settlers passed by, holding her breath and praying they wouldn't spot her. But deep down, she swore that she would never lose hope. She believed that one day things could change. On this particular evening, as she faced the fires that threatened to consume her life, Willa's mind raced with thoughts of escape. Strong memories flooded back, of evenings spent under stars twinkling like diamonds above her, and she clung to those moments fiercely. No matter what happened next, her spirit would not be extinguished easily. When Dirk Calder crashed into her world like thunder in an otherwise calm sky, Willa felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the campsite, the air became thick with tension. The mob of settlers gathered, their faces twisted in anger and fear as they prepared to punish Willa. They believed she was a harbinger of misfortune, a curse upon their community that must be eradicated to restore peace and order to their lives. Whispers circulated among them, fueled by superstition and past grievances. They claimed that orphans like Willa brought nothing but bad luck. It all began when a series of unfortunate events struck the settlement: a drought that withered crops, livestock falling ill, and a recent raid from hostile tribes that left many families grieving. In their desperation to find someone to blame, the settlers turned on Willa, convinced that her very existence was tied to their miseries. She had become a symbol of their collective fear and frustration, a target for their misplaced wrath. As they lit the pyre, flames flickered ominously, casting an eerie glow on the faces of the angry crowd. The crackling wood echoed Willa's racing heart as she realized the gravity of her situation. Bound tightly and surrounded by men and women who had once been neighbors, she felt isolated and terrified. The chants grew louder, calling for justice against what they perceived as a threat to their way of life. Their voices blended into a single menacing roar that drowned out her thoughts. Some settlers argued for mercy, recalling Willa's struggles as an orphan, but their voices were quickly silenced by those who insisted on punishment. "We must rid ourselves of this evil," one man shouted, his eyes wild with fury. "Only then will we have our peace." The crowd roared in agreement, nodding fervently at his words. Willa's mind raced as she fought against her bindings, desperate to escape the fate that awaited her. Memories of fleeting kindnesses from strangers flashed before her eyes, moments when someone had shared a scrap of food or offered a smile. Those memories seemed so far away now, overshadowed by the fear surrounding her. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm her, she caught sight of a rider approaching through the darkness, Dirk Calder. In that instant, hope ignited within her once more, a flicker against the consuming shadow of the mob's rage. Dirk Calder sat astride his horse, a powerful black stallion named Shadow, just beyond the flickering light of the campfire. The cowboy had traveled many miles through the rugged landscape where justice and morality often blurred in a world ruled by harsh realities. With a weathered hat pulled low over his brow and a rugged jaw set firmly, Dirk was not one to shy away from trouble. He was built like the mountains around him, strong and resilient, his broad shoulders draped in a long coat that brushed against his worn leather boots. As he observed the mob gathered around Willa, anger bubbled within him. Dirk had seen enough injustice in his time. It stirred something deep inside when he witnessed those with power turning upon the vulnerable. The flames danced wildly as they crackled and popped, illuminating the frightened face of Willa, bound and trembling at the center of it all. Dirk could feel her fear as if it were his own, and something within him surged, a fierce sense of responsibility awakened. Dirk's reputation preceded him. He was known for standing up for those who couldn't stand for themselves. He valued fairness above all else, believing that every person deserved a fighting chance at life despite their circumstances. Rumors of his bravery had spread throughout the frontier like wildfire, tales of daring rescues and righteous confrontations with outlaws who threatened peace. He prided himself on being a protector, a role he embraced wholeheartedly. As he quietly assessed the situation, Dirk's keen eyes locked onto the angry faces of the settlers. Their misguided emotions fueled an imminent tragedy that he could no longer sit back and watch unfold. The desperation to act burned within him like an ember waiting for air. He knew that this was a moment that required bravery and swift action. He nudged Shadow forward with purpose, confidence radiating from his posture as he prepared to intervene. His heart raced, not from fear but from conviction. This was not just about saving one girl. It was about challenging a collective mindset that turned neighbor against neighbor in times of trouble. Tonight, he would stand against that tide of ignorance. With each stride closer to Willa's side, Dirk felt an unwavering determination swell within him. He would fight for her freedom and dignity against those who saw her merely as a scapegoat for their failures. As darkness enveloped them all, Dirk Calder would become the light in her darkest hour. The commotion of the mob echoed in Dirk's mind, a terrifying symphony of shouts and the crackling of flames. He felt a strong urge to turn away, to ride off into the night and leave the chaos behind him. After all, it would be easy. Many others had done just that, choosing safety over confrontation. Yet, as he sat there on Shadow, watching Willa tremble under the harsh gaze of the settlers, he felt a fire within himself swelling to match that of the pyre. Internal conflict gripped Dirk like a vice. He could hear his instinct urging caution. Recklessness could cost him everything. What if he failed? What if his interference only escalated the violence? Thoughts raced through his mind as he weighed the dangers that lay ahead against what was right. But then he saw Willa again, her small frame shaking with fear, her wide eyes searching for some sign of hope. In that moment, Dirk was reminded of all those who had stood up for him when he had needed help. To remain silent now would betray their courage and his own values. He couldn't allow Willa to face her fate alone. Justice and fairness drove him forward, and each passing second pushed him closer to action. The settlers weren't just condemning Willa, they were making a choice to ignore compassion in favor of fear. His heart pounded loudly in his chest as he recalled his promise to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. With a deep breath, Dirk nudged Shadow forward into motion, determination washing over him like a wave. He pulled his hat down low and drew in strength from every step they took together through the encroaching darkness. No more hesitation, no room for doubt. The time for action had arrived. "Willa," he shouted, voice steady despite the uncertainty that lay ahead. The sound cut through the din of chaos as heads turned toward him in shock. A wave of quiet descended briefly as Dirk dismounted, confidence emanating from his stance. The settlers stared at him with disbelief and rage coiling within them like a snake ready to strike. Their eyes burned bright with anger. However, one thing remained clear: Dirk Calder would not back down lightly. With quick footsteps and resolute heart, he advanced toward Willa, ready to cut her bonds and defy the mob's wrath. In this pivotal moment, when choice meets courage, he stepped boldly into destiny's embrace, unwilling to let fear dictate their fates any longer. Dirk's heart raced as he charged into the fray, his boots hitting the ground with purpose and determination. The mob was a restless sea of anger, and he knew he had to create a distraction to pull their attention away from Willa. With a steady hand gripping his revolver, he took a deep breath, allowing only the sound of the crackling fire to fill his ears for a fleeting moment. "Hey!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the noise like a knife. The crowd turned, startled by the unexpected intruder. Dirk could see disbelief flicker across their faces, quickly transforming into rage as they recognized him. He had become the focus of their wrath, and that was exactly what he wanted. With swift precision, he fired a shot into the air. The loud bang echoed across the camp, silencing the angry shouts and drawing every eye toward him. Smoke curled upward from the barrel of his gun as he stood tall, his silhouette stark against the flames that danced behind him. "If you want to blame someone for your troubles, come at me," he challenged, voice booming with authority. The mob hesitated, uncertainty creeping in as they contemplated this bold cowboy standing alone against them. Dirk's quick thinking bought him precious moments. He took advantage of their confusion to advance closer to Willa, who remained bound and helpless in their grasp. "Don't just stand there. Get him," one settler shouted, snapping the crowd back into action. Dirk could see them rallying, anger brewing anew as they prepared to charge. He needed to act fast. "Hold on, Willa. I'm coming," he called out, taking aim at the ground near the edge of the mob. A second shot rang out, sending Dirk flying and startling several members of the group. The distraction bought him enough time to weave through the chaos. With every stride forward, Dirk felt a surge of adrenaline guiding him. He dodged angry shouts and flailing arms as he closed the distance between himself and Willa. The cries of the crowd faded into mere background noise. All he could focus on was reaching her. In one fluid motion, he sped forward, swiftly dodging a man lunging at him while keeping his eyes locked on Willa. With another calculated shot into the air, he aimed not just to intimidate but to assert his claim over this moment. He would not let fear dictate any longer. As Dirk finally reached Willa's side, he could feel her small frame trembling beneath her binds. In that split second, he drew his knife and expertly cut through the ropes tying her. "You're safe now," he whispered urgently as he freed her from her constraints. Together they would face whatever followed next, but for now, they had taken the first crucial step toward freedom amidst the chaos. As Dirk finally reached Willa, the air buzzed with tension and chaos, but all he could focus on was her trembling form. The mob was still shouting, their voices a distant roar as he knelt beside her. He could see the fear etched across her face, wide eyes filled with a mix of disbelief and hope. Using his knife, he quickly sliced through the ropes binding her wrists, each cut feeling like a lifeline, a promise of freedom. In that instant, Willa felt a rush of emotions flood over her, shock at being freed combined with an overwhelming sense of relief. As the ropes fell away from her wrists, she gasped, rubbing the sore skin where the bindings had dug into her flesh. I can't believe it," she stammered, looking up at Dirk with gratitude shining in her eyes. "You came for me." Dirk offered her a reassuring nod, glancing back toward the mob that was beginning to regroup. "We don't have much time," he urged gently but firmly. "We need to move now." Willa's heart raced as she scrambled to her feet, still trying to comprehend what had just happened. She had been moments away from a terrifying fate when this brave cowboy had stormed in and changed everything. The flickering flames behind them cast shadows that danced like specters of fear, but with Dirk by her side, she felt a spark of strength igniting within her. Suddenly, the crowd surged forward again, anger boiling over as they realized Willa had been freed. Dirk grabbed Willa's hand, guiding her away from the chaos and into the safety of the shadows. Together, they ducked behind a tent just as several settlers ran past them in pursuit, their loud shouts echoing in the night. "Stay close," Dirk instructed quietly as they crouched behind the canvas cover. Willa could hear her own heartbeat thumping loudly in her chest, yet it felt alive and full of possibility. She had escaped the flames, and now she was running toward something new, toward freedom. After a few tense moments listening to the mob pass by, Dirk peeked out cautiously before pulling back. "This way," he whispered urgently, leading Willa into the darkness beyond the camp. Her legs were shaking with adrenaline and the aftermath of fear, but she felt a newfound sense of purpose driving her forward. With each step they took away from danger, Willa glanced at Dirk, this hero who had turned her despair into hope, and knew that together they could find their way to safety and a new beginning amidst the vastness of the frontier. In that fleeting moment of escape, both were aware that their fates were now intertwined, propelled by a shared courage against the storm awaiting them. As Dirk and Willa dashed into the night, the realization of their escape rippled through the mob like a shockwave. Shouts of fury erupted from behind them, and the air filled with the sounds of frenzied footsteps and galloping horses. Dirk felt a surge of adrenaline as he pulled Willa along, their hearts racing in unison as they ran deeper into the cover of darkness. "Keep running," Dirk urged, glancing back to see a few settlers scrambling to mount their horses, eyes wild with rage. The flickering flames from the pyre cast long shadows, illuminating their faces twisted in fury as they rallied to pursue them. He could hear cries of vengeance echoing in the night, a haunting reminder of how close they had come to disaster. In moments, the sound of hoofbeats thundered closer, and Dirk knew they were gaining on them. He tightened his grip on Willa's hand, urging her to match his pace. "We need to find cover," he shouted over the rising din. He could feel the heat of their anger behind him, a relentless tide he would not let swallow them whole. As they raced through the underbrush, bullets began to fly through the air, dangerous reminders of how dire their situation had become. The sharp cracks split the night as shots rang out from behind them, and Dirk ducked instinctively, pulling Willa closer to him. "Stay low," he instructed as they veered towards a cluster of trees that loomed ahead. They weaved through branches and thick undergrowth, trying to stay silent while their hearts pounded like drums. Each footfall was amplified in Dirk's mind. He couldn't afford to falter now. The mob's shouts grew louder, spurring him onward as he pushed through the dense foliage with Willa close at his side. Just as they reached a small clearing, Dirk turned to face Willa. "We have to keep moving. There's no time for fear," he said breathlessly, trying to instill confidence in her trembling frame. She nodded, determination replacing her earlier shock as they caught their breath for just a moment. But even that moment was short-lived. The sounds of pursuit echoed closer as angry voices cut through the stillness. "There. They went this way," one settler shouted, urging others on with furious resolve. With renewed urgency, Dirk took Willa's hand again and led her away from the clearing into a thicket where shadows enveloped them like a cloak of safety. The noise faded into whispers behind them as they plunged deeper into the heart of the wilderness. Breathing heavily and feeling the weight of their escape pressed upon his shoulders, Dirk glanced sideways at Willa. Her wide eyes reflected both fear and resilience, a mirror to his own determination. They would not only run from danger but forge ahead toward freedom together, carving out a new path in the darkness that awaited them beyond these woods. As they rode into the night, Willa's heart raced with a mixture of exhilaration and fear. The wind whipped through her hair, a sensation she hadn't felt in what seemed like forever. For the first time, she was truly free, not just from physical bonds, but from the weight of despair that had hung over her for so long. Yet as the darkness enveloped them, fear still clung to her like a shadow. She could hear the distant shouts of the mob behind them, a haunting reminder of the danger that still lurked. Dirk sat firmly in front of her on shadow, his presence reassuring yet tense. She could feel the muscles in his back tense with every thunderous beat of hooves against the earth. Willa clutched his coat tightly, her fingers digging into the fabric as they galloped away from their pursuers. In those moments, she couldn't help but reflect on how quickly her life had turned from certain doom to unexpected hope. Memories flooded her mind. The nights spent huddled in fear, the whispers of the settlers that branded her an outcast, and the burning pyre that had threatened to take her life. Each thought felt like an echo of pain, contrasting sharply with the adrenaline coursing through her veins now. The world seemed brighter and more vivid than ever, even the stars above twinkled with newfound brilliance against the backdrop of her escape. "What if they catch us?" she whispered into Dirk's ear, unable to shake the dread that lingered despite her newfound freedom. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke the words that had haunted her for so long. Dirk turned his head slightly, his eyes fixed ahead but full of determination. "They won't catch us," he replied firmly. "Not as long as I'm with you." His confidence wrapped around Willa like a warm blanket, offering comfort amidst her swirling fears. For a moment, she allowed herself to believe him. With every hoofbeat that carried them further from danger, she felt a flicker of courage igniting within her. A small flame against the darkness that had threatened to consume her. They were not just running away. They were riding toward something new and hopeful. Willa's heart swelled as she clung to that thought. "What will we do now?" she asked, curiosity mingling with anxiety. Dirk's answer came without hesitation. "We'll find somewhere safe where we can start anew. No more running from fear. We'll forge our own path." As they raced through the night, Willa realized that freedom came not only from escaping her captors, but also from embracing the uncertain future ahead of them. Together, they would face whatever challenges awaited in this vast wilderness. In that thrilling moment of escape, Willa felt a profound sense of hope blossom within her, a belief that perhaps she could finally carve out a life filled with kindness and possibility in the untamed frontier. As they rode through the darkness, Willa's thoughts began to settle, allowing for quiet reflections on their escape. The steady rhythm of hooves against the earth provided a comforting backdrop, and she realized that she wanted to know more about the man who had saved her. Gathering her courage, she turned slightly to Dirk, who was focused on guiding shadow over the uneven terrain. "Can you tell me about yourself?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. "How did you come to be out there tonight?" Dirk glanced back at her with a slight smile, appreciating her curiosity. "It's a long story," he replied, his tone thoughtful. "But I reckon we've got some time while we ride." Willa leaned in closer, eager to hear his tale. "Please," she urged. "I want to know." "All right then," he began, his gaze fixed ahead as if searching for memories in the dark. "I grew up on a ranch not too far from here. My folks taught me all about hard work and respect for the land. They believed in standing up for what's right." He took a deep breath, and Willa could sense a flicker of sadness in his words as he continued. "When I was just a boy, we faced hardships like everyone else, droughts that withered our crops and made life tough. But one day, things changed for me when my family lost everything in a fire. It burned our home to the ground while we were working in the fields." Willa listened intently, feeling a pang of empathy for him. "That must have been awful," she offered quietly. It was, Dirk acknowledged with a nod. But it taught me something important, resilience. I learned that even when life throws its worst at you, you can take control of your fate. He stole another glance back at her, his expression earnest. That's what compelled me to help you tonight. I couldn't stand by while you faced such cruelty. Willa felt moved by Dirk's story and found herself drawn closer to him, not just as her rescuer but as someone who understood hardship and survival as intimately as she did. Their shared experiences forged an invisible bond between them. Both had overcome darkness and carried their scars along with hopes for brighter days. I never thought I'd have someone looking out for me, Willa admitted softly, opening up in return. I always felt so alone. Dirk's eyes softened with understanding as he responded, You're not alone anymore. We're in this together now. With those words hanging in the air between them like a promise, Willa felt a warmth blossom within her heart, an ember of hope amidst the cool night air, and knew that this journey would shape them both in ways they couldn't yet imagine. As they pressed on into the unknown, she realized that perhaps this adventure shared with Dirk was just the beginning of forging not only their futures but also an unbreakable connection along the way. After riding for what felt like hours, Dirk led Willa to a small, abandoned cabin hidden beneath the cover of towering pines. The rough-hewn logs looked worn but sturdy enough to provide some shelter from the biting wind and the watchful eyes of their pursuers. As they dismounted, Willa could hear the soft rustle of leaves and the distant howling of the wind, nature's way of creating a cocoon around them. Here we are, Dirk said, pushing open the creaking door. The cabin was dim inside, with only a few shards of moonlight filtering through broken windows. It's not much, but it'll keep us safe for now. Willa stepped in cautiously, her heart still racing from their escape. She felt a strange mix of fear and relief as she peered around at the dusty corners and bare floorboards. The remnants of past lives lingered in the air, whispering stories she would never know. Dirk moved to clear some debris from a makeshift table and gestured for her to sit. We can rest for a bit before we decide our next move. Willa nodded silently, appreciating his efforts to create a semblance of safety even in this rundown place. As they settled in, Willa couldn't shake the chill from her bones nor the weight of her circumstances. What if they find us? She asked quietly, vulnerability slipping through her toughened exterior. Dirk met her gaze firmly. Then we face them together, he replied, conviction ringing in his voice. His assurance sparked something within her, a flicker of courage that started to warm her spirit. In that moment of stillness amid uncertainty, Willa felt compelled to share more with Dirk. I've always had to fend for myself, she began hesitantly. But I've never had someone stand by me like this. Dirk leaned back slightly, his expression softening as he listened intently. You're stronger than you realize, he acknowledged. It takes guts to survive out here alone. But it also takes courage to let someone in. The weight behind those words sank deep into Willa's heart. Here was a man who understood more than just survival, he understood kindness and connection. How did you learn such bravery? She asked, genuinely curious. Dirk chuckled softly at her question. Bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's standing firm despite it, he explained thoughtfully. It comes from knowing your worth and choosing kindness over cruelty. Willa reflected on his words as she gazed out into the dark woods beyond the cabin walls. The night felt less oppressive now, almost inviting instead, a canvas for hope rather than despair. With each passing moment spent in Dirk's company, she began to understand that courage wasn't solely about facing danger head-on, it also meant opening up and allowing someone else in. She realized that by sharing their burdens together, they not only fortified their resolve but forged a bond that would carry them forward on whatever path lay ahead. As they sat side by side in that little cabin filled with possibility, Willa could almost envision a brighter future waiting on the horizon, one built on trust, hope, and perhaps even friendship amidst the unforgiving frontier they both called home. As dawn approached, the cabin filled with a soft, gray light that seeped through the cracks in the walls, providing a sense of urgency to their situation. Dirk and Willa knew their time was limited. The mob would soon realize they had slipped away from the camp, and the settlers would not rest until they found them. They needed a plan to escape further into the wilderness, away from the search parties that would likely comb the area. We can't stay here much longer, Dirk said, his voice low but firm as he gathered what little energy he had from the previous night's adrenaline. We need to head north, toward the river. It'll provide some cover and a way to put distance between us and those settlers. Willa nodded, her mind racing. But what about food? We can't survive on nothing out there, she said, recalling the last few days of meager scraps she had managed to scavenge. Dirk's brow furrowed in thought for a moment before he replied. We'll have to hunt as we go. I might be able to find some traps or snares to catch small game. The river ought to have fish too. She could see the determination in his eyes, the same kind of resilience he had shared with her before. And if we run into trouble? Willa asked hesitantly, still feeling the weight of unpredictability that lay ahead. That's why we stay alert, Dirk said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We've faced danger before and come out the other side. If we work together, I know we can find our way. With their plan taking shape, Willa felt a renewed sense of purpose swell within her. The fear that had plagued her since their escape began to transform into something stronger, a resolve built on newfound courage and companionship. They spent the next few moments gathering supplies. Willa managed to find a tattered blanket and a couple of loose nails lying around that Dirk could use for bait in his traps. As they moved quietly against the lightning backdrop outside, Dirk turned to her again. "Willa, I want you to understand something," he said earnestly. "No matter what happens out there, you're not alone anymore. We're in this together." His words echoed in her mind as she contemplated their uncertain future. In that moment, she realized how much Dirk had come to mean to her. He represented hope and strength beyond anything she had known in her solitary life. As they stepped outside into the chill of morning air, Willa took a deep breath and felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. With determination guiding them onward, they began their journey deeper into the wilderness together, two unlikely companions bound by survival and the promise of a new beginning in a world full of possibilities yet unexplored. As they ventured deeper into the wilderness, Dirk and Willa felt a confidence building within them. They had successfully evaded the mob so far, but they both understood that their journey was far from over. The tranquility of the woods was suddenly shattered by the sound of horses thundering through the underbrush, a clear indication that the settlers had picked up their trail. "Get low," Dirk commanded, pulling Willa behind a large oak tree as he peered through the branches to catch a glimpse of their pursuers. A plume of dust rose in the distance, and the unmistakable shouts of angry men echoed through the air. The mob was relentless, driven by vengeance and fear, and it dawned on Willa that this encounter could decide their fate. "We need to find a way to distract them," Dirk whispered urgently. "If we can create a diversion, we might slip away unnoticed." Willa nodded, her heart racing anew at the prospect of facing danger once more. "What do you have in mind?" she asked, glancing at him with determination. Dirk surveyed the area and spotted a line of rocks leading away from their hiding spot. "I'll lead them away," he said, his voice steady but laced with tension. "You wait here until you hear me make some noise. Then move toward the river." Just before Willa could protest, Dirk pulled out his revolver and made sure it was loaded. "Trust me," he urged, locking eyes with her to convey his sincerity. There was no room for doubt now. She had to believe in their plan. With that, he dashed out from behind the tree and fired a shot into the air, causing startled horses to rear back and snort in alarm. "Over here." "You want her? Come get me," he shouted, drawing the attention of the settlers who were galloping toward him like a swarm of hornets disturbed from their nest. As they charged after him, Willa's heart pounded in her chest, torn between fear for Dirk's safety and admiration for his bravery. She remembered his words about courage and began to formulate her own role in this moment. She moved quickly but quietly toward the riverbank, knowing she had to trust Dirk explicitly. While he led the mob away from their original path, Willa gathered rocks and twigs alongside the water's edge, preparing to create a commotion of her own if needed. In a flash of adrenaline and instinct, she made a sudden noise, throwing a handful of stones into the water. The splash echoed across the calm surface, catching the attention of any nearby settlers still searching for them. Suddenly, Dirk reappeared around a bend, watching as Willa executed her part of the plan. He gave her an approving nod before retreating further into the trees. Their daring decision to split up and create distractions worked in perfect harmony, as they tested not only their skills for survival, but also their deepening bond founded on trust. They would face whatever awaited them on this rugged frontier together. Two souls united by hardship, releasing the weight of their fears amidst a growing hope for freedom. This decisive showdown would define not only their escape but also shape what lay ahead. Understanding that together they were stronger than any mob could ever be. After what felt like an eternity of navigating the wilderness, Dirk and Willa finally stumbled upon a small, welcoming settlement nestled in a valley surrounded by rolling hills. The sight of simple wooden homes and gardens filled with vibrant flowers brought tears to Willa's eyes. It was a stark contrast to the fear and despair they had fled from, breathing life into her weary spirit. As they approached the town, they were greeted cautiously by its inhabitants, farmers and families who had carved out their own pieces of this frontier land. They eyed Dirk and Willa with curiosity but also compassion, sensing the weariness etched into their faces. Dirk rode forward, his posture confident yet respectful as he introduced themselves. "We mean no harm," he assured the settlers. "We've come a long way seeking refuge from trouble." The townsfolk exchanged looks of understanding. They had seen their share of hardship and knew what it meant to fight for safety. One woman stepped forward, her expression softening as she spoke. "You're welcome here," she said warmly. "We know how hard things can get. You both must have stories to tell." Willa felt her heart swell with gratitude at the kindness in her voice. Her previous fears of being rejected began to melt away as she dismounted Shadow beside Dirk and took a cautious step into this newfound space. As they shared their story with the townspeople of fleeing from a mob and facing endless danger, Willa watched as the community listened intently, their eyes reflecting various emotions: sympathy, anger at the injustice she faced, and an unwavering willingness to help. Dirk took charge in proposing a plan for their future. "We can help you with farm work or any needs you have," he suggested earnestly. In exchange, we ask for shelter and safety while we find our footing." The townsfolk murmured amongst themselves before one elder spoke up. "We believe in lending a helping hand around these parts," he declared. "Join us for supper. We'll discuss how you fit into our community." That evening, the air was filled with laughter and chatter as Willa sat among newfound friends, sharing meals that were plentiful and nourishing. She felt warmth spreading through her not just from the food but also from an overwhelming sense of belonging. Underneath the twinkling stars that stretched across the sky, Dirk leaned closer to Willa as they retired under the porch of their humble new home for the night. "This is just the beginning for us," he whispered softly, reassuring her that they were moving toward brighter days ahead. Willa nodded thoughtfully, absorbing each moment, the fresh start they had long sought finally unfolding before them like the petals of a flower opening in spring. Together, they had survived against all odds, forging not only their path but also deepening their bond within this beautiful new community that accepted them wholeheartedly. In this small haven away from persecution and fear, Willa could already feel hope taking root, a promise that she could reclaim her life with Dirk by her side and that there was always a chance for love and friendship in even the harshest landscapes of life. In the days that followed their arrival at the welcoming settlement, Willa and Dirk began to carve out a new life for themselves, filled with purpose and hope. The community embraced them warmly, offering opportunities to contribute and belong. Each morning brought fresh challenges, but with each challenge, their friendship deepened further, built on shared experiences and mutual respect. Willa found herself learning the ways of the land, how to plant seeds and nurture crops, as well as how to care for animals. She discovered a sense of adventure again in her heart, one that had been dulled by fear and loneliness for so long. Dirk often worked alongside her, teaching her practical skills while also sharing laughter and stories that made her feel alive. One evening, as they sat together on the porch of their new home, the sky awash with vibrant colors from the setting sun, Willa turned to Dirk. "You've shown me what it means to be brave," she said softly, her eyes reflecting gratitude. "I don't think I could have made it without you." Dirk smiled back at her, his expression filled with warmth. "It takes bravery to trust someone else," he replied, gently meeting her gaze. "You've shown more courage than you realize by standing up for yourself and letting me in." The bond they shared was now undeniable. They were two souls intertwined by their past hardships, but also forged anew in this hopeful light. Together they faced not just the challenges of frontier life, but also the fears that had haunted them both. One afternoon, they ventured deeper into the surrounding woods to scout for additional resources when they stumbled upon hidden trails leading to scenic views overlooking valleys dotted with wildflowers. It was a moment of beauty that made Willa pause and reflect on how far she had come from facing persecution to finding a place where she felt secure. With each passing day in the supportive community, Willa realized she wasn't just surviving anymore, she was truly living. The friendships she formed with other townsfolk blossomed like the flowers in spring, colorful and vibrant, and each connection enriched her life beyond measure. In Dirk, she found more than just a protector, he was becoming a true friend and companion in every sense of the word. They discussed dreams for the future late into the evenings beneath starlit skies, the kind of future that held promise instead of fear. As Willa looked over at Dirk one night after another day of hard work and laughter, she felt an overwhelming sense of belonging surge through her. Here, against all odds, they had forged a life together, a testament to friendship and bravery, and with hope lighting their path ahead, she knew that together they could face anything that came their way. Their destinies were now forever intertwined. Willa had found not just safety but a chance at happiness alongside someone who genuinely cared, the kind of bond that would carry them through whatever trials lay ahead in this vast wilderness they now called home.